Welcome everybody. This is a One Basin COC webinar on integrating citizen science into fish tagging programs. Why, you might ask, that's important? Well, essentially, nearly everybody who's associated with water seems to get fish. It's a big basin. We don't have a lot of scientists, so we actually need to try and make a difference by doing something about it, and we're going to hear all about that today. So firstly, I'd like to just acknowledge the country that you're all from. Today, I am on Ngangabal country of the Bundjalung Nation, but I'd like to acknowledge and pay respect to traditional owners of the Murray-Darling Basin and their nations. So just an introduction. So my name is Craig Copeland. I'm the founder and CEO of OzFish. We're a national organisation looking after waterways and trying to engage rec fishers in that activity. Katie?
Thank you, Craig, for the introduction. Yeah, so thank you for all the thumbs up. My name's Katie Doyle. I'm from Sturt University, and yeah, I'm a research fellow there. I originally started this project with quite a broad team, but it's just myself and Braeden talking. So Braeden will present the other half of this presentation. But we've got myself, Lee Baumgartner, John Canallan, Zach Rolfe, Cameron McGregor, and John Rafferty, all from Sturt University. I've got Braeden, who will co-present, Michelle Craig, who's helping us out in this presentation, and Cassie Price, and also Carl Pomeran from Caltech. So I'd also like to acknowledge and pay my respect to the traditional owners of the Murray-Darling Basin and their nations, and also on the lands that we conduct a lot of this work. So I'm guessing most people are aware of the Murray-Darling Basin. You're a pretty educated group of people. You know how important it is, but I'll quickly run through a background. So we have more than 40 First Nations groups in the Murray-Darling Basin, about $22 billion worth of agriculture, 16 internationally recognised and protected wetlands, over 7,000 irrigated agricultural businesses, an $11 billion tourism industry. We have rivers and lakes and heaps of recreational activities, 120 bird species, 50 native fish, 4 territories, 4 states and 1 territory is the distance. And it's obviously our largest and most complex river system and home to 2.3 million people. Now, that gives us a lot of opportunities to engage with regional communities. There's a lot of people out there that really care about this basin. And like myself, there's a lot of recreational anglers. And there's a huge opportunity, as Craig mentioned, to engage these regional communities in contributing to managing Australia's largest and most complex river system and engage them in scientific research and the protection of native fish and rivers. So the way that we see is a really great opportunity is that people have a really special connection to the Murray-Darling Basin through the fish that inhabit the waters. So we've got recreational anglers, as I just mentioned. We've got tourism partnerships. I'm really not sure why this guy is kissing this Murray cod, but apparently he really loves cod at Tokemwal. But we've also got First Nations stories, so Pondi and Gudu. So fish are really important to a lot of different people, and we saw this as a really great opportunity. So traditionally, most of the Murray-Darling Basin research and management decisions for fish and water management have been the responsibility of scientists and government organisations. So myself as a scientist, I've done a lot of work on species like Murray cod and golden perch. Some of my colleagues work here, so Murray-Darling Basin Authority, government agencies like fisheries agencies, and yeah, the university sector. But the basin, as you probably all know, still faces many challenges. We know the photo of all the dying Murray cod out in the Darling that was, globally blasted on every news avenue possible. The local community, they're really keen to tackle these issues, and they're putting their hands up. So they want to be involved, but they just don't know how to do it. So with support from the One Basin CRC, we started to get the cogs turning. So there's a group of, I just mentioned them, but there's a group of 3 different organisations. So myself at Sturt University, OzFish and Caltech. So the university, we have all the background information on tagging fish, fisheries ecology. We develop training workshops already overseas, so we have a lot of the background knowledge and also the relevant approvals. We understand those processes. We then engaged OzFish and formed a really great partnership. And I'll show a video in the next slide on their contribution. But they're the boots on the ground people that will support us research scientists. And then Caltech is a database management organisation run solely by Carl Pomeran. So the three groups have all worked together with the One Basin CRC supporting this. So I'm just going to play a video.
From the smallest of rivers and creeks to our estuaries, lakes and coastal waters, a community gathers to repair, restore and revitalise what has been lost. We are the river keepers, waterway stewards, ocean lovers that want to safeguard our waterways. By restoring habitat in our waterways, we are improving water quality, reducing erosion, reducing the impacts of bushfire, flood and drought, providing shelter for wildlife, reconnecting rivers, supporting native trees and plants and allowing our fish to thrive naturally. Our connection to communities means each project is led by local people, while our science-based approach provides innovation to our conservation efforts. Governments, corporations, communities, together we are collaborating to return our waterways to better health. We empower communities of fishers to come together and give back. Give back to where we live. Give back to the creeks we played in as children. Give back to the rivers we fish in. Give back to the fish we love catching. Give back to country. Give back to Australia's #1 pastime, fishing. Working together, through the power of many hands, we show up again and again to create a better, cleaner and healthier recreational fishing future. We are here to get things done. We are OzFish.
Okay, so you can probably see why I was really excited about working with OzFish. A lot of the research that we do at universities doesn't necessarily get to be communicated to the general public. So when OzFish joined this project, we were really excited to be involved. So what we're looking at here is engaging local communities and First Nations communities of the Murray-Darling Basin in tagging fish. Now, there's a few different types of tags. So there's dart tags, so they're an external tag, and then there's pit tags and acoustic tags. So acoustic tags, they're a surgical procedure. It's an internal tag that you set loggers around the river and the fish will swim past it. You set up the array if you want to understand fish migration. Now, pit tags, the tag of choice, they're pretty much exactly the same as a tag that a dog or cat has. In fact, the technology that you use to scan a microchip in a dog, for example, is exactly the same as pit tags. So, yeah, they're increasingly used as a lower cost individual fish tagging option. This is globally. They can allow long-term data to be collected automatically. Now, in the Murray-Darling Basin, there was a $1 million basin-wide fish detection system installed. So the infrastructure is already available. For example, there's 29 fishways along the Murray River and its tributaries, providing coverage of over 1,300 kilometres of river and surrounding areas. So that's a really fantastic piece of information, but we've actually lost a lot of the fish that were tagged. So throughout the whole Murray-Darling Basin, we need some more fish to be tagged to utilise this to its full capacity and to gather the information. So I just want to show you a video, and Joel's going to play it for me. So I'll hand over to him. Hopefully it will work. But this is just a a little video just to show how effective pit tag information can be in gathering fisheries information. Okay, thank you. I think I just saw a question pop up about whether this technology can be used on fish ladders, and hopefully that video answered the question that yes, definitely. The Lampard project, I wish I could take credit for it, but I can't. It's a fantastic project. All the antenna systems are actually set up on all the fishways, and we can see the migration of fish. So that was just to answer that quick question. Yeah, so as I mentioned before, at Sturt University, we have a fair few of us that have a fair bit of expertise in fish tagging. So a lot of us have worked in government organisations like fisheries, but we've also got our team, so the Inland Fisheries Research Group, have developed protocols for tagging fish, not just pit tagging, but also acoustic tagging, that have been approved by animal ethics organisations. So we run a lot of these activities overseas in Southeast Asia. So that's why we thought we could definitely deliver this in the Murray-Darling Basin with citizen scientists. Now, these sort of programs aren't new. North America is a really good example of getting citizens and recreational anglers involved. So the Bonefish Tarpon Trust is a great example, and I encourage anyone to have a look at what they're doing. But they're using anglers to basically be involved in the tagging process, but also make observations and input data into understanding where tarpon and bonefish are spawning. There's other activities in Australia, mostly in the marine waters. So we've got the New South Wales Department of Primary Industries, so fisheries, the game fish tagging program, so with the big game fish like marlin, and also the tuna champion. So this is not really a new thing. It's definitely starting to get a bit of traction. It just hasn't occurred in Australia's freshwater ecosystems. So I just want to show you how simple this tagging process is. So basically we use a small gun and implant the chip, and that's really it. There's nothing more to that. It's just about accurate placement of the tag. We don't want the tag to enter into any organs. But once you've done it a few times, as you can see from this video, it's pretty straightforward, and that's quite a small fish as well. Now, some of the challenges of this project and taking it to a basin scale are animal ethics considerations. So as you can see there, there is a needle inserted into a fish, and unfortunately things can go wrong if people are not trained very well. So we do need to have very strict animal ethics considerations. We need community members to really understand why they're tagging fish, what the implications of tagged fish are, how to handle fish, the ecology of rivers, and what fish movement means, and really understand those tagging procedures. Now, another major challenge that we have in this project is the data management. So we do have the antenna system set up. Murray-Darling Basin Authority currently own a lot of that data, but it would be really great to understand how we could get that data extracted into something like that Larry the Lamprey video that I just showed, so people could just watch where their fish goes. So I'll hand over to Braeden to run through some of the workshops that we've been doing.
Okay, can you just keep sharing your screen, please?
Yep.
Thank you. So OzFish, I'm Braeden from OzFish. Like Katie said at the start, OzFish Unlimited helped Sturt University and Caltech run the training workshops. So at OzFish, we gave interested community members an opportunity to register their interest through an expression of interest process for the Majura and Swan Hill workshop. The Denilican workshop was more of a targeted event, and that was due to there's quite an active recreational angling group and land care group. So from the expression of interest for the Majura and Swan Hill workshop, there was actually an overwhelming response from community members who wanted to be involved. So from the expression of interest, we were able to select 30 people for the Majura event and 15 people for the Swan Hill workshop. And for the Denilican workshop, there were 35 people who attended. Next slide. So during the workshops, it ran over a 3 to 4 hour period. They involved the people organising it, so Caltech, OzFish, and Sturt University, to discuss native fish life cycle, and management. Introduction to pit tagging and why it's important. Also discuss pit systems throughout the Murray-Darling Basin and beyond. We were also able to discuss why this project is important to community members and why they should be involved and what the future holds for native fish. After we discussed that, we then moved on to the hand-on aspect of the community of the event, and the community members were able to undertake pit tagging alongside trained specialists. So that was Caltech and Sturt University. Once the workshop had been finished, we were then able to discuss with the attendees what worked and what didn't work, and then what the next steps will be for the project. So during the workshops, there were kind of 3 to 4 aspects to it. As I spoke about before, the hands-on aspects, we were able to use the pit tags and the gun, which was used to implement the pit tags, which was shown before. I will say that the fish that we used were all Murray cod, and they were hatchery bred, so we didn't use any wild fish. We were able to, during the workshop, we scanned the native fish to make sure there were no other pit tags in there. There weren't because I hatchery bred, but we just wanted to showcase good practice for the community members in case that this project is undertaken in the future. And then the people were able to actually implement the pit tag into the Murray cod. So once the pit tag was placed into the Murray cod, they were immediately opened up to see where the tag placement was. So we wanted to make sure that this happened because then if it was tagged incorrectly, they were given another opportunity to then undertake that tagging procedure again. So this is for the Denilican event, and it really showcases some of the tag placement. So as Katie mentioned before, we wanted to make sure that the tag is not placed in any of the fish's flesh, skin, or vital organs. If it was, and then the fish were released, that could cause further damage further down the track. And if done incorrectly, that fish could possibly die, which would then be a waste of that tag and that procedure. So some of the early initial results, over 95% of participants tagged pararoyal on their first attempt, which is amazing. Over 85 participants tagged fish in the cavity on their first attempt. Most of the bad placements were tagged placed in the fat or flesh of a fish. And that was really because, as I mentioned before, that fish were from a hatchery, and Charles Sturt University and OzFish believe that because they were fattening these fish up to get ready to sell on to the market, they could have further fat or more fat than what a wild fish would have. And less than 5% of the tags were placed in organs, so the swim bladder or stomach. 80% of all participants tagged accurately in the first attempt. And then what really came from these workshops is that the community members were really keen to get their tagging accurate. And then if they didn't, then they were able to practice tagging on dead fish. And they continued to do that until they did it correctly. So further opportunities, Katie and I will discuss on this. One of the really great things about it was Charles Sturt University, Caltech and OzFish were able to discuss openly with the community about the tagging workshops, why that project is important, what it means for future fisheries management as well, and then to really create further river stewards.
Yeah, and as I said before, it gave the Charles Sturt University staff an arena for us to present some of our other research, and that's quite rare for us to have the opportunity to do that. So the photos I've got up here is some of the otolith work that we do. So an otolith is an ear bone from a fish, so we can actually extract them and we can age the fish just like you do with a tree. But also we can use microchemistry of the river and match it with their ear bone and look at migration. So having that opportunity to talk with the general public and having their interest in a lot of our research was a bit of an offshoot that we weren't expecting from these workshops. But yeah, we came away really enthusiastic about a lot of our research that other people in the community are interested in it as well.
Katie. Oh, sorry, Katie. I just got one more thing to say.
Oh, yep.
Straight after the workshop for the Majura event, Charles Sturt University and OzFish were able to run a forum just like this, which was open to the Majura community. And we actually had a really good response as well. There were over 60 people who attended, and a lot of those people actually come up to myself afterwards and asked if they could be involved in future events. And they were a bit disappointed that they missed out in expression of interest. So it really goes to show that we have people who are keen and interested to be involved and to really help the scientists.
So where are we now? So we've done 3 workshops and we've got some data. Now we've also been conducting some social science interviews with the participants. So they're centered around the motivations for participation in the fish tagging workshops, but also fisheries management activities in general. I have the fun task of analysing all the tagging data and doing some mathematical modelling of that accuracy data and what the implications are across a larger scale if this project was to be upscaled. I will also be working with the animal ethics committees to assess whether a framework is available for involving community members. So right now we have approval as scientists, but how that goes for the general public, we definitely need to develop a framework. and looking at some other locations. So I showed you some examples from mostly North America where projects have successfully been implemented. So there's one project in North America that tags 1 million fish a year with community members. So how did they do it? Why is it successful? What are the lessons that they learned? So that'll be something that we'll look into. And also determine the data management scenarios. So as I said about the Lamprey, how do we get that data? How do we maintain it? Who will do it? And how do we effectively communicate it if this project gets upscaled? So just a really quick summary of what we're hoping to achieve with this project. So it's a scientific assessment of pit tagging by recreational anglers and First Nations and local community groups through these organised workshops, and a proof of concept that local and First Nations communities can be integrated into these sort of projects. So we'll do that with obviously our pilot study that we just ran through a structured program with sufficient training and meeting the basic animal care requirements to investigate whether this project can be undertaken at scale. So that's pretty much it from us.
Thanks, Katie and Braeden. So the first part of this, I just want to add to that, if I can, the issue about the involvement of recreational fishers. This is not necessarily just a science project. This is also an engagement project. So when we're talking about water, you can see all the interest in that audience. Yes, they were taking part in science, but they're also learning at the same time and being enthused about, what's happening with their river, then learning sort of more information about fish ecology and what the fish need to thrive and survive. So there we go. So now we'll go over to a Q&A. I note there's a question there from Molly, Katie, about pit tag receivers only being on fish ladders. But essentially I can answer. So essentially the pit tag reader needs to be in an enclosed space that the fish needs to actually move through a area that can where the reader is. But unfortunately or fortunately, we have about 10,000 barriers to fish passage in New South Wales. So some of those barriers can be remediated with rock ramps and other things, that many of them will require fish ladders to be built. And so we've got thousands of opportunities and most of the basin covered with those structures.
Just to add on to that as well, during the workshops we actually issued handheld readers. So I'm not sure if you remember in the photos that we presented, like a green object with a round circle. So each of those workshops get a handheld reader. So if anglers are out there, they can use that. And check on the status of their fish as well.
So, okay, so what are some of the significant research questions about fish movement that might be answered?
Do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, you take that one, Katie.
Sure. So I'll go back to Larry. So we can see whether the fish ladders are working. That's one of the main reasons why we do this. But we can also get information like responses to environmental flows. So we know that the TUO are currently managing a huge project on environmental flows. We can see whether fish are moving up or downstream based on those releases. We can also look at growth and recapture of fish, especially with those handheld readers. So, for example, if anglers are at a fishing competition, they can use the handheld readers to find, whether their fish was tagged again. And also movements from environmental events, so bushfires, droughts, floods, fish kills, those sorts of things, whether fish are staying in their particular area or if they're shifting out, whether they know to shift out early, if they've got early warning signs, or whether they die and, we get the consequences like those huge fish kills. So there's a lot of information that we can gather.
Okay. So anonymous attendee says, are there examples of other citizen science projects or areas that have been successful, or is there more of this happening already? Well, that's the second part I'll get to later, but the first part is there are some really good citizen science projects around Australia, but particularly around North America, as Katie was alluding to before. And one of them was, I actually was lucky enough to visit, was Yellowstone Lake, and someone mistakenly many years ago had introduced lake trout, which were not from Yellowstone Lake, and they grew very large and very fast, and then proceeded to chomp their way through what we call cutthroat trout, which were the trout that migrated from the lake up into the rivers, which fed the bear and other population of Yellowstone National Park. And so to actually make a change, what the government and Trout Unlimited did there was to get citizens involved in tagging all of the Yellowstone of the lake trout, and so that they could find where they overwintered. And then at the end of winter, as the ice was thawing, they went back with commercial nets and netted these introduced trout out, and that then gave an opportunity for the cutthroat trout to survive. And now the cutthroat trout population is back thriving once more. So there's a perfect example. We have a program in Australia called Tuna Champions. Again, it's a area of a number of different things to do in terms of looking after tuna, which are a very high value species, but also about tagging tuna, involving rec fishers in tagging tuna, and getting the data back to know what's happening with their lifestyle. And so, yes, there are a number of those fish projects around the world, but yes, as Katie said, not in freshwater. Kim said, apologies for him, how many Murray cod are tagged at the Murray-Darling Basin?
Oh, that's a good question. I couldn't answer on the top of my head. It goes through waves of funding cycles. So initially back in the early 2000s, they would tag, like scientists were tagging something like 10,000 fish every year. But as the funding, goes up and down, some years that fish aren't tagged, sometimes, a couple of hundred are tagged. So it's really, I can't tell you an exact number off the top of my head for this year, but yeah, it's definitely declined because, the funding just hasn't been available.
Mohammed's asked, how long did the Murray cod travel from your study? What was the average kilometre travel?
They didn't get very far. So this was a pilot study. So the fish were euthanized as part of our animal ethics requirements. So yeah, they didn't swim far at all. We just wanted to see whether anglers and local communities could accurately place tags in the fish. They weren't released at all. So,
but government agencies have been tagging fish for a long while, and we've seen Murray cod movements, hundreds and hundreds of kilometres. We've also seen, Murray cod sit in a fishway, go up the fishway, and then go down it, and then go up it again and go down it. And essentially what we think it was doing was actually feeding in the fishway, which is fine. But so you get really good local scale movements, and then you can pick up all these longer scale movements. Another anonymous attendee says, do you see the citizen science involvement being successful with acoustic tag?
I would say the challenges that we're facing now with approvals for the pit tagging, let's take it one step at a time. The acoustic tagging requires full anaesthetic for the fish, and it is a full suture procedure. So I am going to look overseas to see if anyone else does it. So I know with the Bonefish Tarpon Trust, the scientists still do the acoustic tagging. A lot of our work over in Southeast Asia, we also do the acoustic tagging ourselves, but with obviously community members are helping, net the fish and recover the fish. But the actual procedure is quite, I'm going to say, invasive. So possibly not the actual surgical procedure. Craig, maybe you have a different.
No, I think that I think it's walk slowly. I think in the first instance, and just get everything right, make sure it's being done right, and get some good data from it, and then go from there. So I think you're exactly right there. Brianna is asking regarding connectivity from one pond to the next. Assuming trout in the USA, is there anything we should be looking out for? You might need to explain that a bit further, Brianna. I think in the US, the creeks were connected to the lake, so there was no connectivity issues. In fact, there weren't any barriers for fish basically within the national park. In Australia, yes, there's a whole bunch of connectivity issues. And often we see in our tagging work, we see fish only staying in certain places because we don't have any fishways in the remainder of the waterway. And so the good part of that is it just shows us, what's working and what's not. And as soon as we have fishways in place, we generally have movement. And of course, if we have weir removals, we just, everything goes back to, to normal, and we find a lot more larger scale movement of fish than was previously existing. And so, yes, it's just a learning procedure.
And just to add to that, when we were at Deniliquin, a lot of the local anglers were really interested in their local weir. So it does have a fishway on it, so the Stevens Weir. And from our workshop, it actually triggered the local community to ask questions, and that weir and fishway was not actually operating. And I think it is now. So that's some of the actions that we can get out of it, that just because it's got a fishway, it doesn't necessarily mean it's always working, but the community are definitely the eyes and the ears on the ground that can notify authorities to fix the infrastructure.
Do you think tagging will also help a strategy to manage carp? That's an interesting question. So part of the issue about carp is carp is across the basin at the moment. And so, and to a large extent, some of the weir pools that we've created in the 5,000 to 10,000 times around the basin have assisted in carp increasing the population. They've got still water. It's good. That they prefer that sort of environment, and they populate well from that. And we've used down in the River Murray, the Lake View to the Sea fishway program, we used essentially a carp trap, which was at the end of the fishways, and was built so that if they jumped, which what carp do in those sort of situations, we were filling up those carp traps with carp, but the number of carp is outweighing the ability to manage those traps, and so it becomes yes. I'm not sure that the tagging essentially helps, although it might show essentially how far and how fast the carp move. Katie.
Yeah, there's a few ways that we have tagged carp in that instance. So one is when environmental flows are released. Carp really like flowing water when it's nice and warm, and they tend to spawn if it's at the right time of year. So tagging can definitely give us that information. But also there's carp called Judas carp. So when it's kind of spawning time, you can actually find their their spawning locations through tagged fish. Now this was acoustic tagging, but if you've got antenna systems set up and you kind of know where they're spawning, you can trigger the time that they're going to spawn. So yeah, we can use tags, but yeah, as Craig said, it's a big challenge.
I think that was actually used in Tasmania, the Judas carp issue.
Yep.
Yes. Nathaniel, are there river systems with fish tag ready infrastructure in place other than the basin?
Yeah, on the east coast, I don't know off the top of my head. Craig, you've got a background in all the locations.
I think there's a couple in Queensland. I think downstream of some of the major dams. We're doing a lot of fishway monitoring, as are other groups in Queensland. But most of that is just sampling upstream and downstream, not tagging. And again, I think the same thing that I'm trying to say before, the value of involving the community is we've got a very big country and a very small population, and to get round to all these different locations is almost impossible for the fishery scientists that we've got that work in this space. So being able to have put some tag infrastructure in place on fishways that have been built and then tag fish is really useful. Another anonymous attendee, this study shows interest in tagging fish. Is there evidence that the community wants to see the results of fish tracking? Are they interested in just understanding the tracks, or are they interested in other research insights derived from these tracks? Is there a risk that anglers might use the tag information to inform their angling and increase angling pressure on fish populations? Katie, you go first, and I want to add on something.
Yeah, that's definitely so. It was really easy to gauge the interest from anglers from the workshops, but that's part of the social science component of this study. So we've got a bunch of interviews asking exactly those questions. Look, from a informing fisherman location point of view, I fished for cod my whole life. I did my PhD on cod. There's live scopes now where you can actually see cod underwater feeding. So even if you know where a fish is located, I don't know that you'll be able to necessarily catch it. And it's not actually live time, the pit tag. So you'll know, say, yesterday it went through the antenna system, but you won't know exactly. But with a live scope on a boat, you can see that fish swimming around. So I don't see that as a huge risk.
So the issue with the work in Yellowstone, which was lucky enough to visit, when they tag these lake trout are fantastic fish. They're a metre or so long. They're a fighting fish. But the fishers themselves wanted to take part because they wanted to restore the ecosystem. And so that's one thing. But the other thing they did is the government paid for all the work that was being done and the acoustic tags that were put in. But Trout Unlimited actually raised its own money to buy receiving stations, and individual fishers then bought the acoustic tags themselves. They just loved to see where the fish were going and what was happening. And we've seen that often. Lee Baumgartner, Katie's boss, is actually one of the guys who actually did some tagging back many years ago with acoustic tags. And every time he gave a presentation to wreck fishers, they were just amazed just at watching the movement patterns, not so much where on the exact snag they turn on, but how they moved and when they moved. And there was a change in pressure system and they moved. There was a little bit of rainfall and they moved, and they were just really amazed at the information that was generated. So
yeah. And
how will you publish the results?
Have I? Not yet. I haven't got them. Yeah. Oh, that's another question that we have to work out as well. So that's part 2 of this project.
So I think there's 2 parts to it. One is there will be a whole bunch of different ways that the university will publish it, but we will try and make sure that we do a couple of things. We have a Ozcast program, which is our podcast series that we'll probably interview Katie for, and just so make sure the results go as far as they can. That'll be, and we will try and use as many social media platforms as we've got available to us to make sure that the message gets out there. All right. There are no open questions. Braeden, anything, any of those questions you want to add to?
No, you guys covered it quite well.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to add to the involvement with anglers and citizen scientists and community members. So the reason we actually went to Deniliquin at the start, we worked with the Edward Walkall Anglers Association and the JIG, so the Joint Indigenous Group out there, and we formed a really great partnership from this project, which is an offshoot. But they started to notice that their Murray crayfish were leaving the water. And this was during the time when there was fish kills everywhere. They gave us a call and said, we've got about 800 Murray crayfish. What do we do? They're all walking out of the water. They can't go back in. Dissolved oxygen is less than 1. It's really bad. And we were actually able to rescue those crayfish, get fisheries on board to give us the emergency permits, and hold them in Albury at our aquaculture facility there. And then we could return them a couple of months later after their spa treatment. That's what we call them. But the just that partnership, and I know OzFish were involved with another component of that, but these community members are starting to interact with scientists, and it's really fantastic that we can get action happening really quickly, and it's not just dependent on government agencies. It's university groups and OzFish and the community.
Thanks, Katie. I just noted in the chat, an old friend of mine, Max Finlayson, has put in about a citizen science survey of wetlands that's been undertaken by a consortium of NGOs, and is inviting anyone on the group who wants to take part, or in fact put that survey out to others within their network, I would recommend that you do so. And you also wish us luck with the experts. Thanks, Max. The podcast is called Ozcast. It's if you just type in Ozcast, it should take you to the location. And there's actually some great scientists from all around the country that have contributed to that: water quality, fish movement, weir impacts, seagrass restoration, etc. So have a look at that if you've got the time. Okay, so here's to firstly, thank you for attending. I hope it was valuable. I hope it was some useful information for you. So a recording link will be emailed to you. There's a QR code there to have a look at it for taking part in the survey if you want to take part in that. There will be a certificate of attendance within the next 2 business days, and this might count to continuing professional development hours. And if you enjoyed it, make sure you take part in next month's. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you to Katie and Braeden, and thanks to the AWS team and the One Basin team for making this happen.